AI education and schooling. We're talking about a little bit of a different topic over here, and with that, we continue with the daily Kaupenjoe app, where I talk for 10 minutes straight, no cuts, no edits, and after 10 minutes, I just cut it off. And I'm going to talk about number one, AI, number one, education in general, and number one, schooling. And I believe that education and schooling, by the way, two entirely different things. I think this is pretty self-evident by anyone who's gone through the school system, which is very strange, right? Almost everyone, like when you really talk to, when you talk to parents, or when you talk to almost anyone who's gone through the school system in recent years, let's say, they all say, like, we got to reform this entire system. And by the way, this happens in almost any country as well, right? So it doesn't even matter, right? Whether or not you're in America, where obviously there's issues with the school system, but even here, let's say, right, in Germany, even there's, I mean, incredible amounts of problems with the school system. But let's start. I'm thinking about how to navigate this. Let's actually start in the school itself. I think that when I think back, it's a real bummer because teachers are definitely underpaid for what they do, because they provide a service that's, in theory, supposed to help the students in their entire future lives. And some of them are too cynical, I would say. Too cynical and too cranky. I've had this happen before, where, you know, you're at like I think I had a equivalent of a D in biology, new teacher, B+. So I went from a D to a B+. Like, what do you want from me at that point? That it's not going to be the teacher. It has to be the teacher at that point, right? I didn't all of a sudden improve by like 2-letter grades, just out of the blue, right? I don't think so. And we also had another teacher in like sort of a sociology political class that basically the guy, what he did is the first 2 or 3 lessons that we had with him, he ranked everyone into the buckets. And once you were in a bucket, it was over. Right, it was done. You were in that bucket, and it was impossible for you to escape the bucket. It might have been possible, but I don't know. A very good friend of mine had the same class as me with that teacher, and there were like 2 or 3 instances which were really interesting. So one of the instances was that we had a presentation that we were allowed to give, and basically the friend of mine basically had we did the presentation together, and we worked on that presentation together, right? I did about half, he did about half. Maybe it was 60-40, but regardless, we both worked on the presentation. And in the end, because the presentation was actually pretty good, the teacher was like, no, he gave us different grades, which is usually not what happens, because I was in the bucket of stupid, and my friend was in the bucket of, he's basically like an A student, right? So that was but my friend stuck up for me, which is actually crazy. Like that's a good friend to have. I'm just gonna say that, right? If you have someone that sticks up for you, even on the, let's say, the thread of maybe them getting a worse grade, that's pretty crazy. Regardless, what then happened was, that was one thing, and then another thing happened. Back then, I was like completely not interested in politics. I think also due to just like the teaching style there, because after this, I was super interested in all sorts of things. Regardless of that, basically we talked about psychology, which was a little bit more into my sphere of interest at the time, and I knew about Maslow's hierarchy of needs and things like that. So I raised my hand and I talked about that, and the reaction that I got was something like, "You know about something like that?" And it's just like, if you get a reaction like that, right? You never raise your hand, and then there's something that interests you, and you get this. It's like, do you think that reinforces positive behavior, or that's no? I just did something that you would appreciate, and you basically mocked me. I'm never gonna raise my hand again, even if I know the answer, right? And if you just point to me and tell me to say something, you've lost the moral high ground at that point. Anyway, that was one thing, or the second thing that happened, and yeah, I think that's sort of the thing, and I just found that absolutely amazing. That this is sort of a what would you say? that can absolutely screw you over. Luckily, it was just a thing that, like a course that didn't really matter in the whole scheme of things. But that's pretty crazy to me. Like that, a teacher can and would do that. But I think it's I don't know if what it really was. If it was like power hunger or something like that. But yeah, that was one thing that from schooling that was a little bit rough. But now we get into the future of schooling. So you have this issue that has persisted and that will persist in the future. But now you introduce AI into the mix. And then we get into, well, basically it shows you the flaws of the system bare naked, right? Because especially if there's any type of essay, let's say, that you have to write, well, I mean, that's going to be written with AI, right? Like 90% of the time. And I'm not going to, let's say, judge anyone for it. Now, the reason why I'm not is because it's a tool, right? You're just using it for your benefit, and then that's it. I just think that it just shows you that the system just doesn't work anymore. Now, you can go to just like everything is exams. That would work. But I think the worst part about it is just that it shows you that it's not, a lot of this stuff is just really not even, I wouldn't say not interesting, but like it's just so not needed. I mean, yes, writing an essay is a skill that might be useful because it gets you to write down your thoughts in a structured manner, and it gets you to make an argument, sometimes even for both sides. And that can be extremely useful, because if you can argue better for both sides, then you're just going to be a more formidable human being, I guess. But AI obviously cuts that short because you can literally just have it spit out whatever. But what I would like to suppose is the following. While you can go through school in whatever way that works, okay? Like, just to be sure, though, that if you get caught cheating, then obviously you have to face the consequences. That's one thing. But get through there, however you can, get the piece of paper. But as I think it was Mark Twain, don't let the schooling interfere with your education, okay? And when it comes to education, if you actually have now freed your time from the uninteresting things that school provides, then learn something that is actually interesting to you. So, and with that, all of a sudden AI does not become a thing to make you dumber, it becomes a thing to make you smarter. Because the crazy thing that you can do with AI is this can be your 24/7 best teacher in the freaking world. It has, like, before we were like, oh, we have a device in our pocket. This is before AI. We have a device in our pocket with all human knowledge at our fingertips. Yeah. And now we can talk to it. Be it Gemini, ChatGPT, or whatever you want to use. Go for it. It's available for free. It can basically teach you anything. And if you go back and forth and have it explain to you things, you can educate yourself to a degree that is incredible. Okay? So I used this last yap. I talked about the Nicomachean ethics, and I wanted to know a certain thing, whether or not I understood this correctly. So I pasted the part of the quote into, I used Gemini in this case. I posted it in there, and then I said, well, I understood this to mean this and this and that and this. And Gemini was like, absolutely, you grasped the core concept perfectly. He's indeed talking about this. And then gave me like 4 bullet points on the ideas that I've laid out and why it was correct. And you can continue to go back and forth, and you could say, okay, if you had to criticize my evaluation of it, how would you do that? And just go back and forth. It might be one of the greatest tools that you can use, while it is especially still free. Use it to learn something, okay? And then just see. And then just see. Because maybe that is going to be bettering your life as well, right? Going back to the idea of, and then what you learn from that, put it into action. I don't know. I really think that that's it's an interesting thought, and I'm actually quite optimistic. I think we're gonna get through this. But it's gonna be a rough before it gets better, but then it's gonna get better. I'm telling you. Until next time.